Well, we are back, and it's my fault that it's been 3 weeks. There was a Super Bowl and a double cold, 2 weeks of a cold for me. So I apologize for that. It's great to be back. You guys, you looking forward to more snow?
No. Well, I mean, I actually do officially get the day off. So, I mean,
Well, that's good.
I don't get paid, but I do actually get it off.
And you don't do your own snow removal here?
Well,
other
I
than
do,
shovel.
and that's why I'm not looking forward to it. Is because I actually didn't even bother to shovel for the little dusting we got, but the most recent one, the piles are so high it took me 2 hours. And I do have one of those like sled shovels, and it really does work well, and it really has saved my back.
Is that a power shovel?
No.
I just learned about power shovels.
No. That's this.
You know what that is?
I could show you later, but it's just.
You know what a power shovel is?
I think I do.
It's weird.
It's like
electric. You plug it in, or you have battery powered.
I think it's like a street sweeper kind of thing, right? It just kind of spins.
I guess so. But anyway, you're blessed that you don't have a metal roof. We get a metal roof.
What do you mean? The whole point of a metal roof is it slides off.
Yeah, exactly true. My son
because of the giant piles in front of your house.
Well, or worse, we have giant piles in front of our house, and it comes down. I mean, it's a roll of the dice whether someone coming into our house at the wrong time
just went around.
What?
I thought people just went around in the winter.
Well, they should. My son got a metal roof. I don't know, a year before we did, 2 years ago. So 3 years ago. And his wife, he wasn't home, but his wife, Sarah, was home when she heard this huge boom and kind of rocked the house. And they have a big house. And it's not funny, but it came off the roof and right through the front deck, made a hole it's composite too. So
I don't like composite.
Yeah. Isn't it stronger than regular?
I don't know if it's stronger. I mean,
Seems it.
It sounds like a good idea of like you're recycling grocery bags, but like the oldest composites, are now 20 years old, and from the installation standpoint, which is my point of view, they are easier because they stay straight. But if you have to get the highest end for it to be worth it. And so my general sort of thing on composite debt with Trex or other products is you have to get the highest end, and it is a good deal more expensive. But if you get the low or the medium grades, it absolutely is not worth it, and will be done within 10 years.
Yeah. Well,
if you're going to do it, you might as well just stick with traditional PT, or use the highest end, or use mahogany.
Or, from my son's perspective, don't get a metal roof. And they even have like ice blockers on the metal roof.
No, but the deck was going to fall apart whether the snow hit it or not.
What do you mean? I mean, there's going to be a hole in the deck one way or the other?
Eventually, yeah.
Okay. Can't argue with that. All right. And another quick family update. My daughter and her family are in Spain with
they
Ben
went with
and
the
Amanda,
Perkins.
With the Perkins. Doing like a VBS for a church there for kids.
You know where in Spain?
No, I don't. I don't.
Yeah, it's cool. I know. I've known Greg's daughter and son-in-law a lot longer than I've known Greg, and I've known Ben and Amanda a long time, and so it's neat.
It's true. I didn't stop to think of that.
Yeah, I've actually Corey is also a builder, so I've worked for Corey, and Ben and my parents are friends, so we've been friends from the womb, as it were. So, and so anyway, I personally think it's neat that they're able to travel,
and I think it's a little weird that Brian knows more about my family than I do.
That's because I have a better memory than you.
Well, that's probably true. Anyway, my name is Greg Law, and this is Brian Collins, and we're back. He wants a longer leash today, which makes me a little nervous, but we'll see how it goes. Because
I'll explain what I mean.
Okay. As you can see, if you can read that in back of us, our subject.
Greg cannot read it.
our subject today is this. It's a question. Do pets go to heaven? I would say, do dogs go to heaven? Because I don't care about cats but do pets go to heaven? Will they be in heaven? So anyway, that's our topic. And Brian, this makes me nervous too, because Brian doesn't care about the question. I care deeply about the question. I'll share a story that will illustrate why.
We will both share stories.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Chris, roll the music. I said music, Chris.
We are snooty, aren't we?
Snooty? Oh, that's good fast.
All right, that's good, Chris.
Wow. Oh, all right. Now it's music. And you can't see this, but the producer is going right with the music.
Our mics might even be muted.
Oh, come on. Are they muted? Oh, good. All right. Okay. So let's roll. And I want to begin by asking Brian, is it safe to say that the Bible does not clearly answer this question?
Yes. Absolutely. And that's sort of why I'm more interested in, like, we have to answer many questions around the question, which is affected. I mean, like, when we tease this, it's sort of any serious theologian would just say, but there's no evidence one way or the other. And so, if we simply stick with the Bible, the question is in one sense unanswerable. Because we're just not given enough information. So rather, in my, I had 3 weeks. I was also sick myself. I just didn't lose my voice, and so I had 3 or 4 weeks to research this. And so there's a lot of questions around this that most Christians or even pastors don't make distinctions. And so I had an opportunity to poll different people, including pastors who. For better or worse, I don't consider most pastors to be theologians, and I think they would agree. And I don't mean any insult by that. I just mean that, like, they just they go to seminary and they get just a dump of information, and then they transition to caring for the sheep.
Yeah, they generally, speaking as a pastor, I agree with you. No offense taken. And I think pastors generally who are seeking to be pastors they want to pastor. They want to get out of seminary. I was anxious in the third year to be gone so I could pastor a flock.
Yeah, and again, I mean that in the best possible sense of, like, the people only have so much time. And so, like, for most people, if they feel a call to care for other people's souls, which is, one of the things that a pastor does. Like, it's in its name. It's pastor is just a Latin word for shepherd. Like, they're shepherding, and so like people are not interested, and perhaps the pastors themselves are not interested in some of the questions that theologians ask, and so. I just see that as sort of a neutral thing, and so just there are just some topics that pastors maybe get like a 5-minute in their entire career of seminary, whereas the layperson imagines that the pastor might spend semesters on a particular topic, and they had a single question in a single class. And so so I'm making a distinction between seminary professors who I would consider theologians in one sense, but just because someone is a pastor doesn't mean they necessarily know everything, and I think that's okay. And so anyway, so like I said, I think that's what Greg and I's dynamic is that I'm not coming at it from a pastoral perspective. So
there are a few exceptions, wouldn't you agree, to pastors who are theologians?
Oh, for sure. But I just mean that I personally,
Generally,
I personally don't know any.
Yeah.
And so like in my, I have, quite a few people who I consider pastors, either because they were ordained or, in the role of being a paid vocational pastor, and they don't know the answer to these questions and have never thought about them. And so, like I said, my point is just because you ask your pastor a deep theological question doesn't mean they actually know the answer.
Is this a deep theological question?
I think what is around it is a deep theological question. And so, and like I said, so we, and the other thing is that like, just because someone's a pastor doesn't mean they're conversant again with either the Bible in the original languages or the material around it. And so I've done a deep enough dive that I'm more confused now than I was 3 weeks ago. but I certainly can answer what I consider some elementary questions, to which questions like I asked Greg, and he had never considered the distinction, and we'll get to that.
Yeah. And I was going to start by asking you this question. Would you agree that the Bible is silent on this? And I changed it to that the Bible does not clearly answer this, because I don't think the Bible, as we're going to see, I don't think the Bible is silent.
Yeah,
but
it's
out of all that it does say.
Well, it's a difficult question because we have to remember that pets, as distinct from animals, are distinctly, the question only makes sense when you reach a certain amount of wealth. And so my friend Gary, who works at the church, he has had a chance to live in Africa, and then is still highly connected with Africa, specifically in Uganda. And he answered the question is like, when I told him, this is a so many Googled question, he quickly brought to the attention, but how many of those people are in America or the Western world? Because in Africa, or at least among the people that he works with, every animal has to have some kind of utility. And so he said the wealthy people in Uganda may have dogs as pets, but the poor people have dogs that have a purpose. It's a burglar alarm. And so there may be some affection between the people, but that's not primarily their purpose. And similarly, cats for them are to catch mice and other vermin. And then the rest of the animals that the people keep are purely practical in terms of like they're going to eat them. And so the question for pets really only makes sense when you've reached a certain amount of wealth. And so as far as I can tell, like, I didn't spend a lot of time looking into this question, but I know a little bit about it. And the Egyptians seem to have had pets in the sense that we think of, but they were also a very wealthy people, or at least they certainly had wealthy people. And so one of the things the Egyptians did was they did mummify their pets. And it's like I'm not entirely speaking out of turn here, because I have a course from the great courses on Egypt, and it's a professor of Egyptology, and he actually specifically has a lecture on animals in ancient Egypt, and he says absolutely the ancient Egyptians had pets in the sense that we think of them. But like I said, it's someone who's below a certain poverty level, the question doesn't really make sense. In my opinion. And so one has to kind of approach the question in a little roundabout way.
All right, let's stipulate that we're talking as people, and two people who are not wealthy, but we're wealthy enough to have pets. So we can
Sure. I'm just trying to frame the question here.
Yeah. Okay.
And the other question that some people don't make the distinction, but it is an important distinction of, are there animals in the new heaven and new earth? And I think we kind of have to answer yes, because of the eschatological imagery like that you have in Isaiah. I think it's 11, where it talks about the wolf lying down with the lamb, and the child putting its hand with the cobra. And so that, and again, if those are merely metaphors, but I don't think that's the right way to think about it, because the Jew didn't think quite in our terms in making those distinctions. And so I think we have to say that yes, there are animals, but then the question becomes, are there particular animals?
Right.
And then are there particular animals that are important to us? And that I do think I have an answer, but I don't immediately want to answer it, because like I said, I'm more interested in, like, let's talk about the bigger issues that even pastors don't make distinctions that I think are important and biblical, in contradistinction to culture, both ancient and modern, because we get a lot of baggage.
Yeah,
so
agreed. Let's start, however, with our culture and move outward from that. A couple of stats here. 68% of homes in the United States, this is 2022 data, 68% of homes have pets. 84.6 million homes. I don't know. So much for my data. Anyway, the top three, let's see if you guys can answer this question. What are the top three animals that are
pets? Well,
number one.
I don't know. Probably dogs, but it could be cats.
Dogs. Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah.
You got it right.
And then cats.
Number two, cats.
And then,
although I just saw another article here.
I don't know. Guinea pigs, rabbits. I don't know.
Yeah. It goes way down to birds. Birds is number three.
Oh, okay. It's not even I mean, I've known lots of people with lots of different animals, and I think I've told this story before. I mean, we even briefly as roommates had a flying squirrel as a pet, but one of our roommates was so fastidious he wanted to get a pet license for it, and so instead, and no one would have cared otherwise. Yeah, he was weird.
Pet license.
Yeah, and so he wanted to register this stupid squirrel, which we named Jeffrey. And so he went to the town hall, and they said, "No, you can't own one because it's an exotic species, even though they're native to New Hampshire." And so if he had just let it go.
Just let it fly.
And I don't even know. They weren't going to enforce it. So I don't know why, but we ended up getting rid of Jeffrey. But Jeffrey was quickly
Jeffrey.
It might not be Jeffrey, but something like that. And he was very quickly domesticated because like he was actually loose in our house. And I wasn't part of this, but they caught him, and then they had a bird cage, and they put him in the bird cage, and he very quickly was sleeping and perfectly happy in the bird cage. Yeah. So I don't.
Who's the famous bear? Not Winnie the Pooh is one bear.
What do you mean the other famous bear? There's lots of famous bears.
Yeah. Anyway,
there was a bear that was in the Polish army in World War II.
Like mascot.
Yeah, but I mean, he actually had like a rank.
Oh, a real bear?
Oh, yeah. Oh. I think his name was like Corporal Kojak or something.
I like the cuddly ones.
No, there's no such thing as cuddly bears in reality.
No, I'm not talking about reality. I'm talking about cuddly bears.
Oh, God.
I have grandchildren, so
it is. I mean, Theodore Roosevelt was a man's man and really did ride a moose. There's a picture of him riding a moose. And he did have some affinity for bears. And so the name Teddy Bear, there was a toy.
Which he did not like.
Oh, I didn't know
the
that.
name Theodore. He preferred to be called Theodore. Did anybody call Teddy Roosevelt Theodore? I don't know.
Oh, I don't know. I didn't know that part. But anyway, it really is traced to him, and it really a real toy company that made stuffed animals or plushies, which I didn't learn until an adult. Right. But I had never heard it.
Me either.
But that's the more sophisticated term.
And in our church, we've been giving away, or the teachers have been giving away.
Bible buddies.
The Bible buddies, who are. What did you just...
Plushies.
Plushies. I think they're kind of plushy. Little balls. It's so cute and so.
No, plushie is just a fancy word for stuffed
I don't
animal.
think what this conversation is going to lead us where we want to go.
Well, I don't know. It's good content, so.
Okay. Oh, speaking of content, do you think I would alienate too many people who are listening to this podcast if I say that even though dogs are number 2, they don't really count? Do you think I should say that?
You mean cats?
Did I say dogs? No, dogs count. Cats do not count.
Oh boy.
I probably shouldn't say that.
Well, you just did.
We have a producer. We can edit this out. Okay. Brian, what now? What?
Oh no! Tell your story.
Oh, thank you. All right, so Chris.
So this is actually personal for Greg, and I'm gonna get to my own point of view.
And you're not gonna,
Well,
trash.
I'll try not to. I mean,
Okay, I
the
appreciate
dog
it.
was an ugly dog, objectively.
You begin by trashing. So
Yeah,
here's
but
what
I already
I'm going
said
to
all this
suggest,
stuff.
Chris, that maybe you could put a pic. I don't have a picture. Well, I could if I took the time to say it, of Shiloh, our little Corgi Chihuahua mix, who has now been deceased for 10 years, 12 years. But you could put a picture of him. Replace Brian's picture on the podcast with Shiloh just for a few weeks until the interest in this topic. Is that okay? Okay. So, yeah, we had a dog named Shiloh, little cute, adorable,
Cute in
Corgi
an
Chihuahua.
ironic way. Chihuahuas are only cute in an
My story.
ironic way.
My story. So I'll make it short. I will. I promise. But here's the thing you need to know about my wife. She's not a fan of animals in general, but animals, especially dogs, are attracted to her, which is, you talk about ironic. So we got this little puppy mainly for the kids as a rescue. He was 2 years old when we got him. He lived to be about 14. He got cancer. We had an operation, paid for it. It came back, and he was in so much pain. He had to be put down. And my wife, who had grown to love this dog that loved her, my wife could not take Shiloh to the vet. So I did. I was delegated to do it. So he sat on my lap all the way to the vet's. And when we got there, the vet invited me to come in while she put him down, and I could not do it. So I sat out in the room and until the deed was done. And then the vet came out and was carrying Shiloh's collar and handed it to me. That was the moment when I just lost it, because he had become, a part of the family, almost human. So anyway, I got in the car with his collar on my lap, and I made it about 2 miles before I just broke down, pulled over into a Dunkin' Donuts. And do you want me to share the scripture? Yeah. Here's my proof text for the question, do pets go to heaven? It's found in Job chapter 12. I was, and I will admit, I was looking for some sort of scripture that would give me an argument for answering the question, yes, pets go to heaven. But this is what Job says, and I won't get into the context or anything. I'll just leave it out there. Job chapter 12 and verses, what is it? Job chapter 12, verses 7 to 10. Is that chapter 12? Here we go. Chapter 12, verses 7 to 10. Here it is. And then we can just end the podcast, because this is pretty much says it all, but I'll read it. Ask the beasts, and they will teach you. The birds of the heaven, and they will tell you. Notice it doesn't say anything about the cats. But anyway. Or the bushes of the earth, and they'll teach you. The fish of the sea will declare to you. Who among these does not know that here's the proof text. The hand of the Lord has done this. It is in his hand is the life of every living thing and the breath of all mankind. I closed my Bible, I stopped my crying, and I went home.
Well, you read from the wrong version.
Oh. Well, go ahead. You take it from here.
Right. So, if Greg had read from the version that he should have read from, it would have used the word soul, which it didn't. You read from the wrong version. So you kind of didn't actually prove your case.
Is the life? What
No,
what
it
is
would have been.
translated
It would have
soul?
been the breath. The breath. Yeah.
Of every. It's a soul.
Soul or
Of
spirit.
every
Yeah.
living thing.
I'd have
And
to.
why does that make a difference?
We'll get to it.
Okay.
So, and this is sort of what my allusion to is a theologian knows things that, and someone who's conversing with the original text, and so I'll come back to it, and so I quickly say that like any theologian would quickly say that's not a good argument because, and we'll come back to it. So
Okay, can I read one short passage again and have you comment on that as well? This is just one. Thanks.
you can read as many as you want.
Well, no, I don't consider this necessarily to be a proof text, but it's in Ecclesiastes. I can't believe I missed this. I did a whole kind of a devotional diary commentary on Book of Ecclesiastes because I'd never really been through
Do
it.
you
and
know
thought
what the
about
real title of Ecclesiastes is?
something about the preacher.
Well, that's an actual translation.
Yeah. What is
Koheleth.
Koheleth? Yeah.
Yeah. It actually means assembler.
I like Ecclesiastes better.
Well, that's just the Greek translation
Okay.
of Koheleth.
That's why Brian is here.
Wow.
So chapter 2, verse, I think or maybe it's chapter 3. We get to verse, for chapter 3.
After all the not the Eagles, the birds song. Turn, turn, turn.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, that's 1 through 8.
Yeah. Yeah, and at the end of that chapter, after there's a time for this and a time for that, a time for everything under the sun, he says, for what happens to the children of man and what happens to the beasts is the same. As one dies, so dies the other. They all have the same breath, soul.
I have to check.
Yeah.
Could be ruach. Could be spirit.
And man has no advantage over the beasts, for all is vanity. All go to one place. All are from the dust, and to dust all return. And here's the interesting verse. Who knows? It's kind of like who knows whether the spirit of man goes upward and the spirit of the beast goes down into the earth?
Yeah,
I have
to check the Hebrew.
Yeah, I sprung that on you.
Yeah.
Because I just saw it this afternoon.
Yeah. All right. So I do, maybe it's more that I want to be seen as a pessimist or a rationalist. And so I sort of cultivate and tease Greg, but I've been through a good deal of pain. And so I was telling, Greg set me up with a second counselor, and he's been really fantastic. Greg has retired, but not really retired, and so he's been very helpful to me personally in ministering to me in a pastoral role, and he kind of, but he helped start the Stevens ministry, and he hooked me up with a guy who is a career counselor, and we've only been meeting maybe 5 or 6 times, and he's already helped enormously. So I just publicly want to say thank you, Greg, and thank you, Steve. But I was telling Steve that or telling someone that I aspire to be purely rational, like Mr. Spock. And Mr. Spock, if you don't know who that is, he's a television and then later movie character played by
Nimoy.
a local Boston guy named Leonard Nimoy.
Boston guy?
Oh yeah,
I did not know.
Yeah,
that.
he was a Boston Jew, and the live long and prosper is actually an ancient Jewish sign that he saw as a kid as a rabbi doing this from the Middle Ages.
Can we agree that Star Trek is the thing you should watch, not Star Wars? Now, I know that one's a TV series, one's a movie.
I personally enjoy both of the early stuff. So the problem is is Hollywood's gonna, milk it dry. And so there's a cartoon of Mickey Mouse, obviously being the alter ego of Walt Disney and the alter ego of just Disney in general. And it's going to a cow that's completely emaciated, and it's got 5 buckets to pump it out. And so that's how I feel about all new media. So I include I haven't seen any of the new trilogy of the Star Wars. Yeah. I haven't seen any of the new Avengers, and I haven't seen any of the new Enterprise thing. And I don't want to, because I heard they're garbage. And so anyway, the point I want to make is Mr. Spock is half Vulcan, half human. And the Vulcans are humanoid, but in the history, they were once barbarians, and so they were able, through pure logic, to overcome their emotions, and then they were able to have a peaceful society. But Mr. Spock, he was raised on Vulcan, but he's half human, and so he's constantly has to suppress his emotional side. And the show doesn't really explore most of those themes. The new movies actually did a little bit, and I thought they did a good job. But in either case, that's what I aspired to. And so if you look at the Victorians, they thought everything, had a biological function. And they said, men are rational and women are irrational. And so it's the man's job. And, and obviously it's an over exaggeration, but whatever their interpretation was or wasn't, I thought that was what an ideal man was. And so for the first 20 odd years of my life, I tried to live purely rational, and I'm now paying for it in that I distrust emotion, and because I know that it can paralyze me, and so there, it doesn't matter what the situation was, but emotions for me are very powerful, and I think a part of me thinks they're dangerous. And doesn't trust them, because it with my depression, I lose the ability to think, full stop. So forget rationally, just think, because I'm just so fixated on my pain. And part of the way out of that is to say, that one of the theologians call these the communicable attributes, i.e., like what attributes do we share with God, being made in His image and His likeness? And one of those things is emotion. And we, in our sinfulness, do not, no doubt, do not correctly represent God. But it's not merely an anthropomorphism when it says that God is angry and that He loves. And so rather, our anger is the incomplete version of His complete proper way. So God can get angry correctly. We can get angry and usually sin. And James, the brother of Jesus, he advises us, in your anger, do not sin. And so, and we see Jesus getting angry correctly. And so the truest human, what Lewis's friend, Charles Williams, called arch natural, like the most natural. Because in John 2, we have he takes a story that probably happened at the end of Jesus' ministry and puts it right at the beginning. And we see Jesus angry at the people selling animals in the temple complex. And I know this is a major digression, but I want to explain what's going on, of why the Jews thought it was okay, because it wasn't interrupting Jewish worship. So like in Herod's temple, you had the greater complex, which was huge. It was like 35 acres. And that was what they called the court of the Gentiles. And then you had the court of the women for Jewish women. And then you had the court of the men. And then you had the inner court for the priests. And then, of course, eventually you have the Holy of Holies. And so they weren't selling the animals within the Jewish part of the thing. And so they in their minds, they said, the people that don't matter are the ones that are affected, but we don't care because we're sons of Israel. And it's very easy to sort of think that, especially where they're an oppressed people under an occupier. They forget that there are other people that are there to worship God, that are true believers in one sense. They just haven't gone all the way to become fully Jews. And so and again, so Jesus knows what the purpose of God's house is, a place of worship, and he's righteously angry because not only are they, and again, the way they would justify this is they say, oh, well, our brethren, are coming in from out of town and they walked all the way here and they didn't bring their animals with him. And God requires sacrifice. So we'll provide the animals right here so they can just pay and then they can sacrifice. So like they're winning, God's winning. But what they're not saying is that they were, doubling and tripling what it was worth. And they also, because of exchange rates and stuff, so they were making money hand over fist. So not only were they not doing a service to their brethren or God, but they were also stealing on top of everything else. And so one of the details that we miss is it says, and it's a little line, it says, Jesus sat down and made a whip. Made a whip. And so that's a very different thing from a spur of the moment, that's premeditated, like. So anyway, and so like I said, Jesus was obviously righteous, and John chooses to put something that's really at the end of Jesus' ministry, because it most certainly was during Holy Week, right before his crucifixion. But John,
is this part of the longer leash?
It is, and I just simply wanted to meditate on how we abuse anger and we abuse our emotions, and to say,
and that relates to that's how.
Because fundamentally, your reaction is non-rational.
I see.
Right? And I don't want to dismiss
non-rational.
So again, no. And this is a very important distinction.
Minimally rational.
No.
But I read the scripture.
No. I'm talking about your reaction.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yes. And again, what I'm saying is the old me would have dismissed that because it's not rational. And so and notice I said non-rational, not irrational.
What I noticed is that you said the what did you say? The me, the previous me, the old me.
Oh yeah,
would have
no, 100%. And so and what I'm saying is that like I'm taking this question very seriously, even though I'm cultivating a persona of flippancy. That's what I'm saying. And so, and in the book Problem of Pain, C.S. Lewis has a chapter actually 2 chapters on animal pain, and this is finally a segue into my story. And he said, I was told not to write this chapter because it'll put me in the company of old maids. And so an old maid, I think in most people's is a tender-hearted old woman. And then he also includes the technical distinction of being virgins. But I as far as I know, I don't know any, with the exception of the lady that worked in Africa and then taught the Katie's kids. She's the only one I know off the top of my head. I just
Katie. Oh, I didn't know
can't
that, but yeah.
think of her name. Louise.
Yeah. Louise McCone.
Yeah. So Louise is the only one that I know that fit. But in either case, I think my grandmother fits the bill in all of the senses, in the sense of like they're tender-hearted to the kind of the point of absurdity. So this is really what my story is about, sort of the inconsistencies in my mind.
Would this it would be appropriate to just stick in a quick quote from The Problem of Pain by C.S. Lewis, or premature?
Yeah, and I'm probably going to correct you unless you actually quoted it correctly.
It has quotation marks.
That doesn't mean
from the problem.
That doesn't mean you got it right.
An animal's soul might live on and through the person who loved it.
Yeah, I was getting there.
All right. That's why I asked you whether you want me to read it now, or are you going to read it? Because I want it read.
Oh, boy.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay.
There's more. But
that actually is my entire answer, but I wanted this to be a part 2.
Oh, so you were like building up to this.
Yes,
Gotcha.
I'm building up to it.
just disregard.
Yeah. Anyway, so my like I said, my grandmother is, sort of tenderhearted to the point of absurdity, and so I actually did have her permission. I went and visited them a week and a half ago, and she, completely open book, and she's like, I sort of am what I am, and I think my sort of forthright honesty must, in some sense, come from her. So I have 3 stories to share about my grandmother. So the first one, in terms of like the absurdity of it, is that like I can understand if someone was a vegetarian, i.e., they had a total tenderheartedness towards animals that they couldn't eat any animals at all. But that's not the case with my grandmother. And she also, feels that the death penalty is both biblical and a good thing. And so again, like there's not a certain sort of tenderhearted or absurdity in that sense. But all that being said, my grandparents, they have 30 odd acres, and 25 of them are woods. And so a friend of theirs asked if he could hunt on their land. They said yes. He caught a deer, or shot a deer, and then the couple invited them to dinner. And then the wife had made deer stew, and she couldn't eat it. My grandmother couldn't eat it, and she has no relation with this deer whatsoever. And so, and again, I remember her telling me this story, 5-10 years ago, and thinking, what's behind this? And so I wanted some qualifications. And so I asked them, cause they, and so I specifically asked her about the incident, and she remembered it. And she said, she had to try and explain it to her friend, the wife, of like why she couldn't eat the deer, and she couldn't really do it. And part of the answer, is that like as a kid, she loved Bambi. And so just every time, she watches Bambi and Bambi's mom is shot.
Probably old Yeller too.
Probably most certainly. But you don't eat dogs, so it's not exactly the same thing. And then there was another thing, like when my mom and uncles were little, they had gotten some chickens, and so they raised the chickens. And then when the chickens got old, naturally in my mind would be to eat them, but she couldn't eat them, so they had to give them away. And, somebody else, ate them. And so I asked her, I said, is it just deer? Like, is it the Bambi thing? Like, could you eat any deer? Like if you didn't know, like, could you eat deer? Cause they do have farms of deer, and you could buy deer meat, and she didn't know the answer. But when I was a kid, I had really wanted sheep, and I also had really wanted cows. And so we raised both sheep and cows, and they were supposed to, like, I had this idea of being a farmer, of I was going to shear the wool. And it was same with the cows. I was going to make a team of oxen, because when I was a kid, I thought the Deerfield Fair pulling was like the coolest thing ever. But neither of those things happened. And so they were just animals that we raised and then eventually ate. And I remembered that I told her that we were eating the sheep, and I didn't remember whether she ate it or not. And she seemed to think that she did end up eating it. But it really gave her pause, because in some sense she knew this animal. And so I, in trying to summarize this whole thing, I asked her, I said,
you are listening to Unleashed with Brian Collins. Go ahead.
Oh, this is just story 1.
Okay.
I asked her, is it basically that, and this was in a movie, it's Steve Buscemi says it to Ewan McGregor. It's like people want to eat the hamburger, but they don't want to meet the cow. And I don't need to explain, it's from a Michael Bay movie, but I like the movie, but we don't need to go there. And she's like, yeah, that's pretty much it. And so, like I said, but here's the strange thing. And I didn't know this before I went to visit. And because I specifically, I told her, why, and that we're doing this podcast. And here's, where, I think most of us would kind of be like, wow, like you actually said that. So, like I said, my grandmother is completely honest with everybody, even to the point of small children. And she probably told me how old my cousin was, but my cousin lived next door, and her little kitty had died, and let's say she was 6, but I think she might have been 4 or 5. And my little cousin, you have to understand my cousin, like she in some sense was a believer from very early, because like she would go and tell people that Santa is dead, like as a small child, like so like. And what she meant was that the real person of Saint Nicholas is.
She should have clarified.
Well, yeah, but again, she would like in public would say this like at a ball and say like Santa is dead. So this is not like a child with no faith at all. This is like a pretty serious little girl, and she was just crying. Like, so my grandmother's telling the story, like, you know, I want grandma, I want grandma. So her mom called grandma, and grandma came over, and Nicole's like, you know, will my kitty be in heaven? And my grandma, you know, very seriously said, Nicole, you know, I don't think that pets will be in heaven. But you know, God is good, and like in heaven there will be no tears. So if you were to go to heaven right now, and the kitty that died is the one thing that you need, that's going to make you happy, then I promise that kitty will be there.
Let me just interject. In my research, I discovered that I believe it was John Wesley is reported to have said that his child came to him and asked the same question: "Will my," I think it was a dog, "be in heaven?" And John Wesley said, reportedly said, that if you get to heaven and you want your dog will be there.
Well, I mean, my grandmother most certainly did not.
She probably did
have that knowledge about John Wesley. So this was an extemporaneous response.
Similar kind of,
and this is a related, but I much more one that's fraught with weeds. And so, sadly, my uncle's first wife, Nicole's mom, left him, and so my uncle has since gotten remarried. And so my new aunt is also a big, or I don't know if my aunt was a pet lover or not, but in either case, my new aunt has lots of animals, and so my aunt and uncle have lots of animals in the house and outside the house. And so, and they go to a church that's pre-millennial, pre-trib and all that. And so my aunt is seriously concerned if she was raptured, what's going to happen to her animals. And like I said, there's all sorts of theological problems and suppositions, but just I'm just simply pointing it out that like it's the same kind of tenderheartedness of care, you know, for your animals.
Yeah, we'll have to come back to this maybe sometime, maybe not today, but you wandered in and away from something that struck a chord with me, which is when you were saying that the saying that somebody might like a hamburger but not want to meet the cow. I take my grandchildren to Tender Crop, which is a farm that has animals, and there's a big, huge cow named Heidi. We named her Heidi, and so we go and see Heidi and pet Heidi and feed her some hay. And
is this just the girls or everybody?
Just pretty much the girls and my little 3-year-old grandson, and they just love it. And but there's a kind of hypocrisy, because I could live on hamburgers. I love hamburgers, cheeseburgers.
That's not even a question.
Well, no, but it is an apparent contradiction.
I just mean a hamburger. I just mean a hamburger is just a naked cheeseburger.
What? I have no idea what you.
I never would want to eat just a hamburger without cheese.
Oh, okay. So we agree.
Yeah.
We agree on a lot of important things.
Well, yeah.
But the contradiction of me taking the kids there and petting.
Well, what kind of cow
Heidi,
is it?
It's a big.
That does
cow.
not
I don't
answer.
know. I don't know my cows.
Is it spotted?
What?
It's spotted.
I I think so.
I just mean milk. I mean, Holsteins
But
are
if
not.
if it's a tender crop, I assume they intend to slaughter it, and because
Not if they get milk from it.
yeah, I don't know. Anyway,
I
we're
actually do know
digressing.
my cows.
Anyway, it's an interesting contradiction in me and in others where you can eat a cheeseburger and not care about the cow, or seem to care about the cow separate from the burger.
Like I said, I personally do not make such a distinction because my both my grandfathers grew up on farms and had a much more practical kind of thing.
Yeah.
and raised animals to
And they
eat.
love the animals,
They
though,
absolutely
while they
love
were-
their
yeah.
love their dogs, and both of my grandfather, my
Well, they didn't eat
dad's-
their dogs though,
They did not eat their dogs,
and they love their cows. I bet, and their pigs. To a
yeah,
degree.
yeah, and one on the other side, a cousin of mine won a pig at the pig scramble, and then my uncle didn't have a place
Pig
to.
scramble makes me think of scrambled eggs and
Well,
ham.
that's
but
not what it is.
okay,
So you know what it is.
I do.
Yeah, it's a very rustic thing where 12-year-old they let there's a lottery, and I think a dozen 12-year-olds are then free to catch a dozen pigs, but they have to actually catch them, and if they catch them, they get to bring them home.
Greased.
I don't know that they're greased, but the pigs are pretty slippery. So if you watch this thing, like most of the kids don't catch them. But anyway, my cousin actually caught one.
Now,
and
why wouldn't they get bitten by the pigs?
they don't bite.
Because they have a big sign.
They don't bite when they're little, though.
Oh, okay. That's probably
They're
the
pretty
difference.
little.
Yeah.
Yeah. They might, but
This is a
don't
very informative
the
podcast.
hoofs are the really anyway. It doesn't matter. The point is, my cousin had no illusions that they were going to eat the pig, and they named it Sausage. They named the pig
Aw,
Sausage.
that's so
and
cute.
my grandfather, he took care of this pig. He's the one that raised it, and I don't know if it was a year and a half, but my grandfather gave the pig a hot mash and all these things, and one of my aunts was worried that my grandfather was going to be sad when the pig was gone, and I don't think he was lying. He's like, I raised animals all my life. Like I have no, illusions, or disillusions. And then every family got some of the meat, and, the butcher, labels what, I don't know if you've ever had a pig butchered, but they label what type of meat it is. And there's different meats are suitable for different things. And so the butcher wrote sausage, meaning it was for sausage meat. Mm-hmm. But one of my cousins who was little at the time thought that they had labeled that it was named for the pig sausage. And so anyway, this is all to say, like, I think these are kind of the emotional things around the question. And hey, Chris, how long have we been going?
About.
Okay, so we've been. I better wrap up.
We can do part two.
No, we most certainly have to do a part two. And I certainly had planned on it. In terms of, like, the problem is Greg and I haven't communicated because he's been sick, and so, like, in my research has been completely separate from his, and so, like, I sort of thought about it biblically, and I haven't even got to the biblically thing, and so I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Hebrew words.
Can I read the rest?
No,
of the
I'm not
C.S.
there yet.
Lewis quote?
I'm not there yet.
You're getting there? Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And so one of the things, and again, this is where a knowledge of the original language came from. And so Terry, Pastor Terry, he is one of the pastors who I also consider to be a theologian. And so he did care for people's soul, but also kept up with questions like this. And so, when I joined DEC in my early to mid-20s, I really learned a lot under his tutelage about taking Bible study seriously. And he's one of the people who inspired me to learn the original languages. And so one of the things that he pointed out in a Bible study sometime in my 20s is that you cannot that you have to let the text say what the text says and not read into it your particular meanings of words. And so soul is one of those unfortunate words that has a lot of baggage attached to it, as with the word spirit. And so if one is to disentangle what the Bible says, in my opinion, you cannot do it in English. You have to do it in the original languages, because otherwise you're going to end up with absurdities. And so in the middle, I mean, we don't need to zoom in here, but in Genesis 1 and Genesis 2, we have two. Well, I don't want to say we have two different creation accounts, because I believe Genesis 2 is about the population of the Garden of Eden as distinguished from the general creation. But in either case, if you ask the person on the street, including pastors, what makes human beings different from animals, they inevitably are going to say the soul. Would you agree with that, Greg?
Yes.
Okay. However, if one reads,
and this I think will feed into where you're going with that. In Genesis, when before Eve, when God was trying to find a helper fit,
well, it's Adam, actually Adam's looking for his own helper.
Yeah, and the animals passed by or whatever, and no animal was found a fit helper or something.
Yeah, but that's the word azer, not soul.
Well, no, but my point is, why?
No, I know, and that's what I'm going to answer.
Okay, all right.
So like I said, but like I said, if you were to ask the person on the street, including pastors, what distinguishes a human being from an animal, they would say the soul. Okay. Now in Hebrew, there are two words that are near synonyms, in my opinion and scholarly opinion, and those words are nephesh, which we generally translate as soul, and the word ruach, which we generally translate as spirit. But the way that basically the entire Old Testament uses them, it uses them indiscriminately for living beings. And so you get, and the word life is chaya. And so in the old 70s musical L'chaim, to life, so, to life, L'chaim. So anyway, you hear the word chaya, and that's actually what Eve's name is an older version of that name. Her name is Cheva, and so it's the same word. It just changes in the Hebrew language. So anyway, so it refers to animals and human beings as ruach chaya and nefesh chaya. And it just simply means that they're breathing. And we can go into a longer explanation of etymology. But the point is that you cannot point to animals and human beings being distinct in having souls or spirits, because that's simply not the language that the Old Testament. And again, I haven't proved that to you. I'm just stating that fact, that in Genesis, if you get a good interlinear, you will find that. And so in the King James would translate nephesh as soul pretty much everywhere, and that sort of usage it's kind of complicated, because there can be about 10 different meanings, and when we use the word often, how sometimes they use it in the Bible to mean self, like my soul, like it as myself. That's another way how the Bible uses it a lot in the Psalms. And another way is just to say, as opposed to man versus woman, sometimes it'll say nephesh, if a nephesh instead of adam, meaning that like it could be a woman bringing a sacrifice or a man bringing a sacrifice. That's another way that it uses it. But the base meaning of nephesh is actually throat. And so the famous psalm about as the deer panteth for my water, so my soul pants for you. So my throat is thirsty. So there's a double meaning there. And so both of them have the idea of if it's breathing, it's alive. And so you're not going to find in the Old Testament any idea of this of a soul or a ruach surviving into later. And so you have to so then the question becomes where does the doctrine of the immortality of the soul come from, and what and again I will answer these questions in part 2, but simply to say that the immortality.
Are you making a blanket statement that in the Old Testament there is no sense of immortality? Because there are exceptions. There are windows.
Well, there are hints.
Yeah.
But again, the hint is not in the immortality of the soul, but rather the resurrection of the dead. And that's really what I want to harp on, is that like you get little pinches. And so the best example, there's a couple of them. So there's in Job 24:29, not 29, 19. It's actually difficult to translate because the words have different nuances, and so it says something like, I actually had it written on the blackboard for years, and I might have mentioned that last week or last time we talked. It says like, I know that my Redeemer lives. And so you have that word Gaol, like kinsman redeemer. And obviously, ultimately, it refers to Christ, but Boaz was also a kinsman redeemer. I know my Redeemer lives, and he will stand or resurrect. The word is kum in Hebrew, and it means both stand, and it also means resurrection. And he will stand, and I will from the dust. Or the far, and so it's like I said, it's difficult to translate because there's different nuances for the different words. It's the same word that Adam was created out of the dust, afar, and so that I think is the best example of resurrection in the Old Testament, and obviously by Jesus' time, the people had an idea of resurrection because these simple people, because Martha's like, when Jesus is going to raise Lazarus, or Martha doesn't know what Jesus is going to do, and Jesus has just cried, and Martha's like, if you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died, and Jesus says, well, he will stand again, he will rise again, and she says, well, I know that in the general resurrection, but what about now? And then of course Jesus raises him to life, and so the point is that there's a big distinction, and again, one of the things that's important is that like Jews as they are now are distinct from what early Israelites believed. And so a lot of Christians can be uncomfortable, because how much revelation did God give? I mean, would a Jew in the Sinai know God's total plan for salvation? And the answer is absolutely not. God slowly revealed who he is through the prophets, and we have to deal with that. Is what did different people at different times believe? And so again, that sounds kind of wrong, and it's been perverted. In the German schools starting in the 18th and 19th century, where they just sort of said that that this is all fake, and we can reconstruct an evolutionary history of religion, but rather the correct way is to say that God slowly revealed himself to different people at different times.
So we have, I would estimate, about 10 minutes before we wrap, if we're going to keep within our normal time frame. So where do you want to end this?
Yeah, so like I said, I mean, you can finally read your quote from C.S. Lewis, and then I will say what I think is somewhat non-trivial in this discussion. And so different Christians have had different opinions about this. And so I one of the things I was telling our producer Chris is that it didn't occur to me to actually Google the question. like until this afternoon when I Googled because
That's probably a good thing.
Well, I don't
to
know
the scripture.
and that's sort of what I was positing to Chris is that like I'm biblically literate enough to know that there's not actually an answer in the scriptures. Yeah, your candy's still right there.
It's not candy.
Well, it's medicine, candy,
Cough drop. Okay, ready?
Yeah. So anyway, so Greg is about to quote from the 9th chapter of The Problem with Pain, where Lewis deals with animal pain, and then I will provide my synthesis of what Lewis I think, and like I said, I believe he's correct, but it's all speculative.
Yes, which we agreed at the beginning.
Yeah, 100%.
The best speculative, and I would say too before I read this that Lewis is not the only one to take this position, as I've been researching.
Absolutely not.
So here's what he says. An animal soul might live on in and through the person who loved it as a kind of grace, not because animals need to earn heaven, but because love carries them there.
Yeah. So again, like I said, this is part of 2 chapters, and it's also part of Lewis's broader view of animals, and so Lewis had we don't know much about Lewis's interaction with dogs or cats, but he mentions in his autobiography that growing up they had a terrier. I think his name was Tim, and Lewis liked going on walks all his life. But at the end of Tim's life, when Lewis was a teenager, he got fat and couldn't walk very well, and so Tim did not go on the
Actually,
walks.
I think not that it matters, but I think because I was just reading about that. I think his name was Jack, which is
Lewis's name was Jack.
Yes.
No, he came up with the name Jaxie on his own as a 6-year-old. He doesn't even know why he came up with it, other than he declared to the family, "I want to be known as Jaxie, shortened to Jack."
I thought that's what he called.
No, the dog's name.
Okay, go ahead.
Not. I think he may have been a Jack Russell. No. So that might be the. But anyway, like I said, Tim didn't go on walks, and one of the things that Lewis says about him is that like he never actually obeyed you. He just sometimes agreed with you.
That sounds like a cat.
Yeah. So, but anyway, we get the sense that Lewis likes animals, and I don't know if at the kilns if he and Warney had animals. They lived at an estate in Cambridge,
and if you included all of his fiction,
yeah, and
they're populated.
Well,
with
yeah, and
that's
that's really what I wanted to get to. And one of the things that Lewis correctly points out is that like we as Christians have just sort of wholly swallowed because we haven't thought critically about it. And if you remember the Grizzly Man. There was this weirdo guy who was, he absolutely was weird. And he was a cocaine addict. And part of the way he got sober is he went and hung out in the Alaskan wilderness.
Is this a real guy?
Oh, this is a real thing. And he videotaped himself. And the bears, the grizzly bears would come visit him. And then eventually one of them ended up eating him. And no, yeah. And again, I don't.
Art imitates life.
Well, yeah.
Life imitates art.
Anyway, like I said, some people are familiar. It's called the Grizzly Man Diaries, and it's a real story. And someone took his videotape footage, and he would just talk to the camera, and so he's like an old school vlogger, but it's before YouTube. So, anyway, the implicit assumption among evolutionary people is that the native state of all animals is in the wild, but that's not necessarily the biblical view, in as much as that like Adam, if I don't know the answer to whether Adam and Eve were created at the same time as the animals, but if they were not, then one of the roles that Adam may have been, his job may have been, was to be a priest to the animals, in the sense of being a mediator between them and God. And so, like I said, in one sense, we get that sense when all the animals come before Adam when he's looking for his mate. his Azer, his helpmate, and that's what the role. And so like, and I think one of the things that God is doing there, which you alluded to, is like, are animals a suitable companion in the way that a wife is a suitable companion for a man? And the answer was obviously no, but that doesn't mean that he didn't have pets in the way that we would think of them. And so in the space trilogy, we have a man who is kidnapped, goes to Mars, and then goes to Venus, and then ends up meeting these spiritual beings that are obedient to the one true God. I might have talked about this before. But when that man comes back, he has powers of the original Adam. And so he is able to talk with the animals, and they adore him and do things, and they obey him. And so that's really the natural state of animals, to adore man in this kind of hierarchical. And so we are so obsessed with power and its abuses that we forget that it was once good before the fall. And so that there was a natural order that man was to have dominion over the beasts, to take care of them, not to abuse them. And so we've so focused on the abuse of man towards animals and women and everything else that we say that all power is intrinsically bad, which is not true, at least not in the fundamental level. And so anyway, so like I said, that's part of Lewis's theology is that, like, again, people don't like the word tame, but that's really what we're doing with dogs, is that we're in one sense taming them. Training is just a different nuance of the same word. But I just mean, like, we interfere with the dog. We teach it not to pee on the floor and poop on the floor and bite people and snap and not steal food.
You use the word interfere. That's a bad thing.
Well, and that's how most people would feel. And that's Lewis's word. Interfere, because that was part of his own journey, is that he hated interference in his own life, and God, and he had to come to the point that, like, God, if he made, then he gets to interfere in our life. And that's actually part of in the problem with pain. And he's making a different point there, where he's talking about the puppy, if he were a theologian, would doubt the goodness of man. But then he said, the adult dog that's longer lived than its wolf cousins, would not doubt the goodness of man, and would be exposed to pleasures that would not. And so similarly, like, and also, I think I alluded to this too, is that, like, in friendship, we become more, not less, in our relationships. And so C.S. Lewis in, I think it's Letters to Malcolm, do we talk about this already?
No.
Oh, okay.
But I think I know where you're going.
Yeah, and so he talks about how his friend Charles Williams had died. He died just before the end of World War II. And Token's second name is Ronald. And so he said, now that Charles is dead, a part of Ronald has died. And the laughter that only a Carolin, he uses the Latin form of Charles, it's a Carolinsian joke that would bring out that part of Ronald. And so now that Charles is dead, that part of Ronald, or Token, is dead also. And so in one sense, like, the complete Token is only complete with Charles. And so by extension with the dog is that, like, they in one sense bring out a better part of us. And so it may be that, like, we, like, in taming or training and loving animals, like, they extend us. And so it may be that part of the resurrection of, like, the best of us that was made more human, and certainly the dogs were made more human in our loving them, that they may also be in heaven with us, in that we are more fully human.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to wrap it. And what I'd like to do with you in next week is go in the direction which I hadn't planned on going in. Maybe you did, but the idea of you use Lewis's word interfering. Is part of that. Even though he uses the word interfering, I see it as domesticating, or biblically a part of our role.
It's called
to rule over
theologians call it the dominion mandate.
Dominion mandate. Yes, that's a better word. But that's interesting. And I also find interesting Lewis's, what I understand Lewis's point to be, that the possibility that animals will be in heaven relates less to who they are by creation, more to their relationship with those who were saved.
Yes, 100%, 100%,
Yeah.
and that is exactly what my thesis is, and that's why, like, I think it's a non-trivial way, and I don't remember what I said, but I said something like, if I were to write a paper, it would be resurrection of pets as an extension of believers. That would given themes in C.S. Lewis's thinking. That would be how I would title the essay.
I'm glad that you're coming over to my opinion and the opinion of millions and millions of others who.
But again, the point that I wanted to make is that your opinion doesn't hold water by any real theologian rationally.
Yeah, and that's okay with me. That's okay with us, right? That's okay with us.
Well, and so, like, I actually have a few more thoughts. So I was talking to someone this morning, it was Danny, and he's going to be leading a course on what is Christianity, and the way it was presented, they had a little video, and there's this guy who I assume is a real physicist, and he talks about him coming to Christ after 30 years of being an atheist, and he said, like when you learn particle physics and string theory, like, you need some help, and I was probably the only one in the audience that know what particle physics and string theory even are, and can explain anyway. And so I was like, wow, like he's really going for it. So this class is, I was telling Danny, I was like, so this class is for experts. And so then we got talking about of the problem of theodicy, of is God just, and sort of the problem. And one of the things that Danny said is that, like, he personally does not find explanations for the problem of pain very satisfying emotionally. And I said, well, there's kind of a reason for that. And even C.S. Lewis, in his book, that's the entire point of the book, he says simply, like, don't look for comfort. Like, if you search for truth, you may find comfort. And I hate this adage, but I think it sort of illustrates what I'm talking about like, shoot for the stars and you might reach the moon, sort of thing. And so, and what Lewis is talking about is like, in art and all sort of aesthetic things, people are seeking to be original for their own sake. And so what you end up with is bananas duct taped on the wall, right? And most of us are saying that's insane. And, like, I don't know where the guy that came up with that, like, if he's laughing all the way to bank, and he's sort of like making a meta narrative on art critics who are just, they're so full on themselves, or they're just so creative that they can find meaning when there's nothing really there.
Yeah.
And so they've pranksters have placed glasses on the floor of art museums, and you can see the people taking pictures and finding meaning. And so, like I said, what C.S. Lewis says is that, like, if you seek to be original, you're not going to get there. If you seek truth, you may say something new and original. And so similarly, if you're seeking comfort, you're not going to find it. But if you seek truth and you say that, like, God is good and all powerful,
comfort will follow.
Yeah, comfort may follow. But if you're simply seeking comfort, Lewis says about himself, he said, I know what it'll take for comfort, a bottle of port. You know what I mean? And so that's why, like, I personally would rather approach the issue in a much more roundabout way, because I can quickly drill holes in your proof text.
Yeah. Well, then I'd
And
prefer
so,
you
well, and that's exactly
not do that,
well,
but do it in a circular way. So
well,
you come around
well, and
to where we are.
so like I said, like that's sort of like the meta of where I'm coming from.
Okay. So good place to wrap. More of maybe a little more of C.S. Lewis, a lot more of Brian Collins in your thesis, and maybe another story or two next week. Thank you for being with us. Chris, roll that music. Oh my goodness. Oh, and remember, Chris, I don't think this is being taped. I'll send you the picture of Shiloh. Make sure you replace his picture with it. All right. Just kidding. Although I probably will send him the picture and see what happens. Thank you for saying that only once before I started the story.
I mean that. I mean, I say that tongue in cheek, but what I